Welcome, everybody, to Satan and Coffee. Sorry for the late start. It is a bit later in the morning. It's still a morning show because it's 11:30 where I'm at, so we're still good on time. I hope everyone is doing well. No guests today. But gotta maintain the solo shows. But anyway, what we're going to be talking about this morning is a topic that I'm kind of labeling as the Coven of Sovereigns and why the left-hand path isn't necessarily a lone wolf cult. There's a comment that was made to me recently that because of something that I had posted on on the post section here in YouTube, let me see if I can pull this up really quick. Let's see here. So we're gonna go go to channel. Getting notifications for shit. Here we go. So because of something I posted about 3 days ago, roughly, somebody had said that they find that based off of this, the way that I define my path is as kind of like, not caring about anyone outside of, my own family or things like that. And I don't necessarily find that to be true, but for context, let's read what it is that I wrote. So I said, I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm my path. Hate me for any reason, I'll still be here. Stare into the mirror. I don't fit your boxes. I worship Lucifer, Baphomet, Lilith, Satan, Samael, and I also hold conservative values that make half of you furious. I'm not on your left or your right. I'm on my path. It's forged, it's deliberate, and unapologetic. You hate me for worship. You hate me for politics. You hate me for things that don't touch your life at all. Perfect. What better proof of the left-hand path than being hated from every angle or refusing to fold into someone else's narrow narrative? I don't come here to be liked. I came here to be real. If my existence makes you gather together and chant your shared disdain, go ahead. Call me scapegoat, call me villain. I'll stand in the center and watch your unity from around your collective outrage. That tells me one thing. I'm doing my job. I will never apologize for being myself or for living the life that means something to me. You want to fight? I'll give you clarity instead. Bring your arguments. Say what you must, but know this. I will not be erased to make you comfortable. If that makes you angry, good. Grow from it. Or keep burning in the same small flames of consensus. So that's something I posted about 3 days ago on several different platforms. And somebody took that statement and I think misinterpreted what it was that I was trying to put down here. And the idea here is that no, the left-hand path isn't about being hated from all angles, right? It isn't about, just pissing people off and, being the adversary on everything just to be the adversary on everything. And that's kind of the point that I was trying to make with this. The point that I was trying to make with this statement was it's not about being hated. It's not about doing things intentionally for people to fucking hate you, because there's a very short list of shit that you can do that will guarantee that everybody around you will fucking hate you and despise you. That is, it is, it's a short list of shit that you need to do. But if being who you are gets you heat from multiple angles, so be it. And with recent discussions and things that have been happening and stuff like that, conversations that I've had, about, the argument against the whether or not witchcraft is inherently political. I don't believe that witchcraft is inherently political by any means of the imagination. I do not believe so. But that's based off of my definition of inherently. And apparently there are people have found different definitions for the same word, apparently. We can't agree on definitions. And if we can't agree on definitions, then we'll never come to a consensus. We'll never come to an understanding. We'll never come to an agreement on terms. Because if we can't agree on the definitions, and this was something that was explained to me actually by Biker Witch that was on Friday. One of the things we're talking about is how fluid our conversations go. And one of the reasons why our conversations go so fluidly is because we share, definitions. And it is through the shared definitions that we're able to come to an agreement, on these different things. When you don't share a definition with somebody, then it's very difficult to, have an agreement when your definition differs from what other people do. And I try to maintain myself on the definition that is provided by the dictionary for most things. So I'm not trying to change the meaning of words to fit any narrative or direction or box. It's just, that's what the word means. That's the correct contextual usage. I use it as such. People disagree with that. There's really not much that I can do there. But it did bring up a point, though, that there are a lot of people that I've seen that do feel that way, that do feel that the left-hand path is only for the lone wolf. That lone wolf mentality, that mentality of only doing things for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with lone wolf practice, solitary practice. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Most of my practice is probably fairly solitary, even being with someone that is an occultist. Both of our practices are still, primarily they're solitary crafts. We don't really kind of involve each other in each other's things very, very often. There's overlap and it's significantly easier, but when we do want to do something group wise or in pairs, but it doesn't, we still treat it as an individual practice. So sovereignty is in isolation. This is the one thing I do want to kind of talk about, though. Paranormal Witch, it's good to see you again. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Been a minute. And you're not that late. The intro is running for about 10 minutes, and I've been talking for about 8. So you're good. You're good. So sovereignty and agency doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the rest of the world, right? There's cliches that kind of go around with the younger generation of people that are getting into the left-hand path. And, the whole concept, the whole teenaged angst of nobody understands me, or, edgelord contrarianism, or permanent exile cosplay, it is definitely, something that there's a part of it that exists in the left-hand path, and it's undeniable. A lot of people, kind of get hung up on that, and even people that have been in the craft, the left-hand path for some time, still fall prey to, those cliches, right? What I want to kind of talk about here is kind of like more like the history, the psychology, and some real life blueprints, to build, tribe without tyranny. And how these things can play into each other and work together. So as we talked about terms, we talked about definitions. So we have to agree on a definition to begin with, right? So the working definition for left-hand path is self-directed gnosis, self-responsibility, right? Deconditioning and self-authorship of value. Right. So this is the definition for the continuation of the show, today's show, and the general definition that I have of the left-hand path, right, is, again, self-directed gnosis, self-responsibility, deconditioning, and self-authorship of value, right? Solitude for integration versus isolation for identity. Okay, so there is an element, obviously, within the left-hand path when it comes to, integration of the shadow, when you're doing shadow work and, you need to do things, or you feel like you need to do things on your own. Excuse me. Mm. Is that better? Yeah, it's better. Okay. So when you need to do things by yourself, there's an element of that, right? You know, there when you integrate the shadow into, you know, you practice into your life, you know, you're growing through the shadow work. There is a level of isolation. There's a level of isolation that, you know, we go into that is constructive to the path. But then there is isolation as identity. And I think that this is where people kind of get confused, or when they hear me talk a lot of the time. I know that, you know, the way that I speak at times can be fairly nihilistic. That isn't to say that I think that, you know, trying to fix things in the world is a lost cause. I'm just realistic, right? I mean, I have hope, I have aspiration, I have goals, you know, of things that I want to achieve. And it's the whole reason I have a podcast, right? Multiple podcasts. It's the whole reason I have, you know, Infernal Compass, you know, the life coaching, you know, all of these things exist because I believe that, you know, people can be saved, not by me, but by themselves. And maybe if I can help them see their own power, their own ability, then they'll be able to save themselves and, you know, be better people for themselves. Right. You know, so everything that I do is around the idea of helping people, of building, you know, something for other people to find a better side of themselves, or a more whole, complete side of themselves. So I have hope, but I'm also very realistic. And I do believe in the notion of, you know, the only expectation I have of people is I expect people to be who they are. That's it. Right? Whoever you show me that you are through your character and the context of your actions, you know, is what creates expectation for me. So when you show me who you are, I expect you to be that person because that's who you are. And that could be good or that could be bad. Right? You know, if, you know, what you've shown me or what I see of you is that you're a piece of shit, then I'm going to expect you to be a piece of shit, right? You know, if you're a liar, I'm going to expect you to be a liar. If you're a good person, you're helpful and you're there for your friends and your family and stuff like that, guess what? I'm going to expect you to, you know, live up to the expectations that you set for yourself. I let people set their expectations of who they are for me. And that's the only expectation that I have. Right, is what you show me that, you know, you are as a person, right? That's it, nothing else. And I think that those should be the only expectations that you have of people. Now, that being said, this does create, you know, that idea that, you know, it's like, yes, I am hopeful for a better world. I am hopeful for people to do better. I am hopeful for people to, you know, be more open and have more conversation and, you know, resort less to being a piece of shit in life. But at the same time, I'm also realistic. Like I look at, you know, things that I've had to endure, right? You know, the twisting of my words, things to being taken out of context, people attacking me from all sides, the ridiculous amount of Christians that constantly pop into our chat or my comment section with their infamous line of Christ is King, like that does something, you know, and I just expect people to be who they are. That's it. I expect a Christian to act like a Christian, you know, especially an evangelical, you know, I just expect people to act how they act. And when you begin to sit there and you pay attention to the majority of society and you see, you know, the things that are happening recently, well, I mean, expectations are low. Right? Like expectations are generally fucking low for society. I do not have high bearing expectations for humanity. I really don't. I really don't. You know, war, torture, cruelty, you know, death, murder, theft. You know, and I mean, and the list, I mean, these are just generalizations, you know, but, you know, the list could go on for eternity. And it's just, you know, when you look at that and you have a realistic perspective, regardless of the amount of hope that you have, you just kind of have to sit there and go, well, shit. You know, we're not getting anywhere, are we? We're not, you know, taking this to the next level, are we? So I can understand why somebody that would look at, my content and look at the things that I say and sit there and say, well, like, and you like, I don't agree with this idea that you have that, helping the world is, a waste of time. It's not that I think that helping the world is, necessarily a waste of time. I mean, okay, let's be honest. Helping the world is a waste of time. There's no way that I can help the world. I'm one person. But, helping people in the world to be better people in the world indirectly helps the world. Do I have like high hopes for global society? Fuck no. Do I have high hopes for the individual that seeks out assistance and help and wants to be a better person? Of course I do. I have a major amount of, respect and hope for those people. And it is within that hope that, I function and I move, with the things that I do. Right. So again, distinguishing solitude for integration and isolation as identity, it's very easy to tell who's playing the edgelord and who's sitting there going, saying shit and doing shit because they think it makes them look edgy and it makes people pay attention. It's not hard to see these things, right? It just kind of is. Adversary, the term adversary, right? So we have, again, we're creating definitions here, right? So inner standard, right? The inner standard bearer against stagnation, not a license for social incompetence or abuse, right? So when I say adversary or being adversarial, being the adversary or being adversarial in practice, whether that be in practice magically or, humanistically in life as life is lived, right, is an inner standard barrier against stagnation. That's what it is. It is to stand against stagnation. Okay. It is not a license for social incompetence. It's not a license to be a jackass, to be a piece of shit, to be, it is not a license to do those types of things. So when I say that I am adversarial to something, when I say that as, people hating me from all angles is, a representation of left-hand, adversarial left-hand path practice, I don't mean that in a way that is, to be edgy. I mean that in a way that I am not going to sacrifice who I am to appease one group of people or another. If there's an aspect of me that this group of people hates, and there's an aspect of me that this group of people hates, and I'm kind of stuck here in the middle with both of these sides saying, well, we hate this about you and you can't be this, and this side we hate you about this about you and you can't do this. I'm not going to shift views, concept, morality, principles to appease either side to say, okay, I'm a part of this group, group A or group B or C or D or E or F. I'm just going to continue being me, and those that respect me being myself, well, those are the ones that reap the most benefit, aren't they? Right? If you're one of those people that are going to respect who I am as a person, respect my decisions, respect my ideas, regardless of whether you disagree with them or not, then there's much benefit that the both of us can, get out of, having conversation and discourse and, some type of interaction. But, if you're going to take one thing, assume the rest, and then jump down my throat because you think you know who I am, well, then kind of like, what's the point, right? So now that we have some of the, terrain defined here, right? So with clear terms, the working definition for left-hand path, for adversary, and the distinction between solitude for integration and isolation as identity, right? Initiatory currents were communal, right? Going through the history here. So we're going to go through the history that refuses the lone wolf story with this. Sorry about the sound behind me. That is a cat scratching into my table. I tell them not to do it and they do it anyway. So just kind of is what it is. So initiatory currents were communal. So circles, lineages, lodges, houses, temples. Okay, most places of worship going through history, right, have been and always are communal. So these types of things, regardless of your path or what direction you would go into, were things that everyone within that community, within the magical community, where it was able to take advantage of. Now, sometimes you did that in a group, sometimes you did that by yourself, sometimes there were set dates and things like that. So, you know, and this isn't inherently like left-hand path, obviously, but usually this stuff, if you go back into the meat of the history, it's always been communal. It's always been, you know, Curtis, what's up, dude? Damn, you're still breathing. Good to see you. How are you? How are you and Bonnie doing? So there's that part of it. Then you have kind of like the pre-modern, you know, antinomian kind of, you know, strands, right? And mystery initiations that centered personal gnosis inside of shared rites, right? That's good, dude. I'm happy. I'm happy to hear it, man. I'm happy to hear it. We got to get you guys on again soon. Definitely. Pick a day, man. I do mornings for Satan and Coffee, Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays. I still do Apocrypha on Saturdays. So, like, pick a day and let me know when you're free, and we'll get the two of you on. I think it'd be a great conversation to have, especially with all the shit that's been going around recently. So, be good conversation. So yeah, so you have these antinomian strands and mystery initiations, right, that's centered around personal gnosis inside of shared rites. So people were still trying to kind of grow kind of like their own gnosis, you know, through kind of like all these, you know, shared processes. Now, with modern left-hand path, the milestones here is like, so the mid to late 19th century occult revival, the 20th century systems formalizing, right? So orders, lodges, and temples, contemporary Luciferian and demonolatry communities, publishing circula, hosting group rights, and mentoring. So I feel like the whole lone wolf path thing is actually rather new. I would say probably starting back in the 19th century, like the whole idea that, you know, the craft is less communal and more, you know, personal, right? It's, you know, it's kind of like recent iterations. Like there's been a focus on solitary witchcraft. I think starting with the most notable for me would be Scott Cunningham, right? So, you know, Wicca for, like, you know, the solitary practitioner, I think the name of the book was, or Witchcraft for the Solitary Practitioner, which was not Cunningham. I can see the name in my head, but I can't remember what it was. So, you know, back in like, you know, mid to late 90s, early 2000s, you know, the whole solitary practitioner thing became a big selling point in the community. And because it's hard to find a coven or a group of people to work with that reflect, you know, a sufficient amount of one's own beliefs to justify joining a group, right? And then, you know, there's also a level of responsibility that comes with that, right? When you make that commitment to show up and be there, and, you know, sometimes life gets in the way, sometimes you can't, you know. So I do feel like, you know, the solitary witchcraft route was definitely a needed addition, you know, to our history. And it's not that there never used to be, prior to the 19th century, solitary witches, you know, or the solitary practitioners within the left-hand path, you know, black magicians. But I think it was a lot less common before the 19th century, because I think people understood the importance of drawing energy from each other. You know, when going into, practice to get something done, that it was more effective, in a group, right? So from temples to study groups, infrastructure exists because the work benefits from mirrors, mentors, and method. So the reason why being a solitary practitioner has, isn't the only way to do things is because our ancestors, the founders of, the practices that we use today, most of them understood greatly that there is benefit by having people to mirror you, having people to teach you, and having a method being handed down, through iterations of generations of people in an order. These things build power over time. There is like we talk about ancestry a lot and working with ancestors, in the left-hand path. It's definitely a part of the shadow integration. But I think we kind of overlook the point of why it's powerful. When you have, a method that is handed down generationally, in an order, in a coven, or what have you, a lodge, because of the amount of repetition over years and years and years of learning, it hones, that right's power, that right's ability, and it becomes stronger. And this also plays into, I'm going to be very honest here, this plays into the idea we talked about previously about using your own power in ritual and not inherently needing, a demon or a god present when you're performing magic. Gods and demons and entities have their place and purpose and function, and it is important to call on them when needed and to use their abilities and their powers, to your ends. It is very much, a deep integral part of the craft. But I think with the fascination that we've had with these things, right? Genes as well, book of life is a genetic code. I agree. I do. And I think, when magic exists in a family and it's passed down, it becomes, integrated into the genetics of the family. I think there are maybe people from way back when that, were natural and selected, but I do think that you can incorporate, our power is found in our ancestral code. Exactly. 100%. And so I think people kind of overlook their own power, their own ability. And one of the important aspects of, the left-hand path is, understanding that power, understanding that ability, not necessarily or inherently as a solitary witch or a solitary practitioner that works, that functions, but it's understanding that when you have a group of people that have a lineage that go down through time, that everyone's family has been connected to this order, has been connected to this coven, and has transferred that power through this circle, over, centuries, right? 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years, 200 years, what have you. Sadly, I'm hard pressed to think of any orders that, are older than 100 years old. Like I can probably, think of a couple that are coming up on 100 years, but actually thinking of anything that surpasses that or goes past 100 years, I honestly can't think of a single order off the top of my head that's that old. I'm not saying that there isn't, it's just I can't think of one. And that's sad, because if you think about it like having an order that your family has worked their magic through for 200, 300, 400 years. Imagine the amount of power that just exists in that space and around those people, and how much is being pulled through everyone. I think we forget, the importance of this and our own power. Again, we don't necessarily inherently need a god or a demon or an entity present for ritual to work. I've said it before, most of the time when I do ritual, I'm not calling on anything. I'm using my own power. I have power that works to do the work that needs to be done. You know, when I call on something, it's for gnosis and better understanding, and then how to improve or increase my output in what it is that I'm already doing. You know, I very rarely actually call on anything when I'm doing client work or when I'm doing like my own work. You know, I work through my own power. You know, I use, you know, and the entities that I work with, that I worship, that I revere, more as teachers and mentors in my path to give growth. And am I a solitary practitioner? Yeah, for the most part, I'm a solitary practitioner. But I also think that there's this idea that because I'm a solitary practitioner, that for some reason, I don't think that, you know, the rest of the world is worthy of my time or, you know, attention. And those things are not the same. They're not, you know, connected all the time. Now, moving forward here. So talking about the psychology of power, right? Here's an important like part. Like I love getting into Jung when we talk about this stuff, because I mean, Jung is just like a cornerstone of the left-hand path. And for me, a cornerstone of the occult, even though he's a, you know, he's one of the grandfathers of psychology, the science of psychology, the human mind, right? Individuation is retaliation, right? Individuation is relational. Shadow material is exposed through other people. Things that you need to work on in your life become exposed when you associate and work with other people. When you have that mirror, that reflection, that relation, right? And then you feel the retaliation come in, like that uncomfortable sensation. Something gets pointed out, or when you notice something about yourself, you begin to expose parts of yourself that you need to integrate, that you need to work on. So the concept of everyone hates me is often projection. It's, you know, resentment, a sovereignty leak, you could say, right? And again, the whole everyone hates me thing is, you know, it's very edgelordy. It's very, you know, it's a cop-out of what the left-hand path actually is. So again, in my statement, referring back to my statement that I wrote, you know, when I said that, you know, I get hate from every angle, I don't think everyone hates me on every single side of the, you know, of the spectrum of life. But I do feel that, you know, there are a lot of people that, you know, are in high disagreement with my perspectives, my ideas, and my opinions. And there are others that have high disapproval of, you know, my religious standpoint, my spiritual standpoint, where I am spiritually. And through that, I get, you know, I do get pressure and commentary from varying angles of, you know, spectral life. And the one thing that I've understood, and what this comment is supposed to highlight, that's on the post section, is that I don't care. I truly don't. I don't care if you don't like me. It's somebody not liking me is truly inconsequential as to whether or not I'm able to exist. Now, am I happy that people dislike me? No, I'm not happy about it. But do I actually give a shit if people legitimately hate me for stupid reasons? No, not really. I don't really care. You know, if somebody hates me because I fucked up on something, I made a mistake, and then, yeah, okay, that I do care about, because it's like, okay, I made a mistake, you know, I need to do better. But most of the time when people hate you, hate is very close to love. Like, a lot of people think that hate is the opposite of love. The opposite of love is apathy. Like, the opposite of both hate and love is apathy. It's not caring, right? Is being apathetic. Because to hate someone requires the same amount of energy that it does to love them. And it's still an energy transfer. It's still the same level of importance and connection, you know, that you're giving when you hate someone as to when you love them. So the opposite of both hate and love, if love and hate are parallels and not oppositional, then the opposite of both of those equally is apathy. Right? So when somebody says that they hate me, I mean, sorry, I guess, not sorry. I don't do anything to affect anyone. Nothing I do or talk about affects anyone in their lives. So if you're going to hate me because, of an idea that I have, because, I believe, Baphomet's an actual entity and not, just a pretty drawing and a concept, from, some random French dude, a couple hundred years ago, that's on you, right? That's just an example. I have actually yet to have anyone actually hate me because I think that Baphomet's a real entity. But if you hate me because, I work with demons, because, I'm a demonologer. I prefer the term Satanist. I really do prefer the term Satanist, but I think Satanist just kind of really narrows it. And then you have to deal with, the inevitable people that are like the Levian Satanists, like the Church of Satan guys, that are going to turn around and say that you can't be a theistic Satanist because it's atheistic, and it's just kind of like, well, welcome to the dark side of Christianity, right? It's like it's Christianity dark, right? It's like dark brew Christianity, Catholicism, dark brew Catholicism, is what I find most Levian Satanists to be. But I do prefer the term Satanist. And I do prefer the term Satanist because it's significantly more romanticized, isn't it? Right? And instead of like juggling terms and being like, oh, I'm a practitioner of the left-hand path. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Right? Like, I mean, the left-hand path is, you can practice the left-hand path. It's a life philosophy. It's an overlay that goes on top of fucking anything. Like the original, most of us as elder millennials, our original initiation into the left-hand path was Levian Satanism, because I think we were too hyped up on Mountain Dew, Surge, and pizza to be able to even begin to understand Friedrich Nietzsche on any meaningful level. So we weren't like nihilists per se, right? We weren't Nietzschean. So, but I think Anton LaVey, back in those times, gave us enough, Nietzsche integrated into the Satanic Bible that we were able to digest the ideas. We were able to digest, the philosophy. And I think that for a lot of us, the beginning part of our walk on the left-hand path probably began with the Satanic Bible. I know for a fact that mine did. I immediately rejected the idea that, all of the stuff that was being talked about, all of the satanic rituals were just psychobabble, was just psychodrama. Like I immediately refuted that. I immediately was like, no, like that's not a point that, I agree with. I don't agree that, this stuff is, just in your head. I think a lot of it is, but not all of it. I do believe in the spirituality. I am theistic. But the philosophy, the Satanic Bible is still philosophically a cornerstone to my practice and me as a person. I'm hard pressed to think of any book by any author that has truly affected me and molded me in the way that the Satanic Bible did. So, continuing forward, right? So that was kind of like a long drawn rant on the whole everyone hates me type of thing, right? So the proper mirrors for this, like when we're looking at group work, right? Currently, it would be a good start. Not back when, because the thing is Shay was probably about like when I was 16. I think he's younger than me. So like when I was like 16, 17, he would have been 14, 15. Right? So unfortunately, back when we were getting into this stuff, his book wasn't an option then. But I do think that, I'm going to be completely honest, I would definitely suggest Chevale's Friedrich Nietzsche in The Left-Hand Path in conjunction with the Satanic Bible as like beginning reading for people that want to get into the left-hand path. I think that both of those would be amazing together and should probably be like mandatory reading to anybody that wants to be on the left-hand path. Right? So, proper mirrors when it comes to the reason why group work is important is proper mirrors. Your peers, your mentors, and adversarial friends who call you out without colonizing your will, right? And this is extremely important, right? And I think this is also something that we've kind of lost, is the idea of openly calling somebody out without being a fucking dick about it, right? Like, it's okay that when somebody makes a mistake on any level, to call them out for that mistake so they're able to correct it and maybe even shine a little light on the correction. You know, but I think that those mirrors that we have in group work, whether that's in the community, like, so when I say group work, it's not necessarily going and doing ritual with people, right? It could be a community very much like this one, right? Where in this community, you do have like, you know, different levels of, you know, people in this community that you can look at, you know, some of them as being, you know, peers, you know, people that you have conversation with, you talk about things, that you sit here and you hang out in the chat with, right? Mentors, right? There's a lot of people that come in here that I would consider mentors. Behemoth X, Curtis Joseph, you know, Scarlett, right? Scarlett Bales, Nate Bales, you know, all of these people, I would definitely, you know, consider them, you know, at mentor level, right? These are people that are going to, you know, provide you perspectives. These are people that have been through the ringer, you know, they've done their time, you know, going through, you know, the process of writing books and doing rituals and performing magic and getting results. You know, they've done the reading, they've done the time in front of the altar, and, you know, they are sources to be revered. You know, when it comes to the left-hand path and when it comes to our gnosis and our spiritual growth, right? So again, you know, in a community such as this, you know, we already have, you know, those two right there are intrinsically, you know, enveloped into a community like this. And then, you know, adversarial friends, people that, you know, you get along with. And I would definitely say that, you know, for example, you know, my friendship, you know, with Mystic and myself, like Mystic is my best friend. But one of the things that I expect of somebody at that level, that I would go in and say, this person is my best friend, is he calls me out when I make a mistake, when I, you know, so the thing is yes, Rook and Mystic would definitely can be considered mentors, but they don't go out of their way to be mentors, right? They can mentor you, they can talk to you, they can teach you, but they definitely don't go out of their way to kind of incorporate, you know, that aspect of things into what they do. And for me, with, you know, Rook and Mystic specifically, I consider them more peers, right? For myself. So for me, like, same thing with, like, I would like looking at, you know, Curtis Joseph, or, you know, quite a few other people, you know, I would consider to be my peer. Right. And so for me, Mystic, what the role that Mystic plays in what it is that I do is he's that adversarial friend. He's the one that, you know, he's not gonna, you know, be a dick to me. He's not gonna be an asshole, but when he sees something he disagrees with, he's gonna tell me that he disagrees with it, and he's gonna tell me why, which gives me an opportunity to look at it, to relook at it. And I think, again, this, having a community to go to, having a community to walk the path with, right, is extremely important. because you get these mirrors that provide different perspectives to everything that you're doing, right? And then, the rule here would be choose feedback, reject control, and, community is a crucible, not a cage. The community is something to, work through and work up in, and, choose your feedback, right? Like, allow feedback to come in, but like when anybody tries to control what it is that you're doing or what it is that you're saying, reject it, right? That's the idea, right? Now, the next part that we're going to kind of talk about here is kind of solo witchcraft practice versus kind of sovereignty with allies, right? An operating model, right? How this looks. So solo time, right? Alone time, right? The path by yourself, journaling, trance, right? Ordeal, making pacts, your own, delegable work that you do, are things that, you can work on by yourself consistently, constantly, and all the time. Allied time, like if you do decide to do kind of like spiritual work with a group, spiritual work doesn't need to be spiritual. It doesn't need to be work that is, in front of the altar, calling on the gods and, stuff like that. Ally time, time with your allies could be, a debate circle, skill challenges, group ritual, and then to, just to pressure and test results. It is a positive way to look at things, and balance your solitary practice with something that you could be doing with other people, right? A way to maybe structure that, one-on-one mentorship, apprentice mentor type of thing, triads. So like, accountability, cross training, study lodges, tax, praxis cycles, working cells, right? Project-based rights, research, community service, all of these things are a way to kind of like, as much as I hate to give them credit for this, I have to give credit where credit is due. But if we look at like the Satanic Temple, with the Satanic Temple, the community outreach programs that they have, are amazing, for a satanic organization. I give a lot of credit, to that, to that outreach work that they do. And it keeps Satanism, in the minds of the public and in such a way that is, these people help. They help clean the community, or they help out in soup kitchens, and they're giving back to the community, as an organization. And I think that is absolutely amazing. I do think that they need to really change the fucking video for their after school Satan shit. For as cool as that video is, it's horrible advertising, right? Like, most parents are gonna watch that and be like, fuck no. But anyway, moving on. So myths to kind of kill off here, right? The anti-victim doctrine, right? So if they don't hate you, you're not left-hand path enough. That's insecurity marketing, right? So I'm not sitting here saying that, people need to hate me in order for me to be left-hand path. What I'm saying, or what I'm reiterating here, is if people hate you for what you're doing, then so be it, right? It doesn't, just because people disagree with you and then hate you because they disagree with you doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong or that you need to change what you're doing. If that's the conclusion that you come to, then that's your conclusion. But that is a case-by-case basis. In my personal opinion, the amount of hate and disagreement that I get through everything that's going on in my life, it doesn't warrant me changing who or what I am. It just kind of is what it is, and I need to let people do what it is that they want to do. Like, if people want to hate me because, I have particular values or because I believe in something, then they're the ones wasting energy, not me, right? Community and conformity, right? So only if the group is weak, right, does community equal conformity. You do not, like, if you're in, like, I would like to believe that the community that we have built here is a community of non-conformity, right? Like nobody is being asked to conform to one thing or another. Everyone is welcome. Christian, pagan, left-hand path, Satanist, doesn't matter, right? Everyone is welcome, no matter what their path is. And that's the thing. So it's a community that is not based on or does not push the idea of conformity. You do not need to conform to any ideas that I present. I'm just speaking my truth. That's it, right? And I think only if a group is weak does, that happen. Does the conformity happen? And when we talk about community, we're talking about building charters and not cults, right? So like, a community begins to grow, people begin to, agree with the ideology of the thing that's being built, and, charters and expansion begins to happen as a natural, reaction to that. And as long as it builds in as like a charter and just kind of like expansion of an idea instead of somebody claiming control and saying, well, you need to be this way to be in this, it's kind of ridiculous. And then another, thing to kind of like knock out here is gatekeeping proves power. And it's just a no. Competence and results are the only gate that matter, right? So your competence, your understanding, and your ability to produce results, those are the only things that matter. Right? One of the reasons why we all believe in what we believe in is because we consistently produce results. We, through our own power, our own ability, and our own focus, we build and create results. And it is through those results that's all we need. We don't need anything else. We don't need $1,000. We don't need, for people to dress a certain way or, no, there is no Kool-Aid to be drank. So, finding community, if possible, as an occultist is very important. While we're being active, witch hunted by Christofascists, going back to Addie's statement on occult unification. Yeah. I mean, well, it's a point that, I keep making. Nobody seems to listen to me. I mean, everything that's happening right now, I said it would. Nobody listened. It goes back to like, I mean, I don't remember who, but I remember a few comments back then, when I was talking about those things, talking about, yeah, well, we just go back underground and, it's a solitary practice anyway. And this, that, and the next thing is like, well, I mean, you can be a solitary practitioner, but, what does going on back underground do? Like, it doesn't do anything for anyone. Like, it just proves, the jackass is right, and then makes it more difficult to come back out, right? Shit doesn't blow over, right? Like, I mean, for at least the United States, for the United States to be as free as it currently is, a lot of atrocity needed to happen for people to kind of open their eyes and go, oh shit, that's fucked up, right? Like that's the thing, right? Like shit has always had to get to a point. I mean, I don't know if any other country is the same way, but I do know that the United States is this way. If you look at American history and culture, but it's we have to do some really fucked up shit for the rest of the world or the rest of the public to kind of go, oh no, that's too much. That's too much. While we're already doing really fucked up shit, right? Where we're already doing fucked up shit, and then something really, really extreme needs to happen, and everybody goes, ooh, no, can't get behind that one. And that's when we start to change shit, right? Right, because people begin to actually kind of sit there and go, yeah, there's something wrong with this, isn't there? Yeah, there is. There's definitely something wrong with it. And then that's when we kind of start making decisions like, well, maybe we should change it. And I go, well, about 100 years too late, but sure, let's go. And that's just how the United States works. That's how the United States has always functioned, right? Now, I'm just going to repeat it. I'll reiterate the point here for the people in the back that didn't hear it. It's like I've been saying this shit for fucking years, guys. Years. Nobody listened. Nobody listened. I've been doing this show, what, not Satan and Coffee. I've been doing like, live shows for, I think, what, 5 years now? 5, 6 years? For 5, 6 years, I've been saying this shit. Nobody fucking listened to me. And now it's starting to happen. They're like, oh, look what's happening. It's like, yeah, It's like, I fucking told you. I told you this shit was going to go down. I told you it was going to happen. And the thing is everybody's fucking guilty. It's not one thing or the other. Everybody's guilty for perpetuating the shit on, however it is that they perpetuate it. Hate will perpetuate hate. Violence will perpetuate violence. That's it. That's it. War only ends when one side concedes. Or both sides say enough people have died and we both concede. That's when war ends. Right? So long as one side still has some fight in it and they're fighting back, war's not going to end. That same concept perpetuates throughout society. And the thing is that so long as you perpetuate a certain ideal or a certain action, it will perpetuate that in return. I've been saying it for years. When it comes down to, the shit that happened with the Satanic Temple, somebody tried to fucking firebomb it, and I think somebody tried to do something else. I think they tried to blow it up or something with like a fucking pipe bomb on the porch. Politicians destroying, spiritual holiday setups in a government building because it was the Satanic Temple, the destroying of the guide stones, right? It kind of just kept perpetuating and perpetuating and perpetuating. And now with the shit that's gone down in the last couple of weeks, and here's the thing, the witch hunt thing, that was happening before what happened in the last couple of weeks. The witch hunts, that's not a new thing. We talked about this on this show. The witch hunt shit's, it's not new. It's not a new, it's not a new concept. It's been happening. Now, grant you, up until now, it has been just a bunch of fucking backwater fucking evangelical fucking Christian nationalists that have been kind of hunting through witch groups trying to figure out where meetings would be just to show up and kind of fucking shit on the party, right? A little bit of harassment, a little bit of threat here, a little bit, threat there. You have no clue what's been happening. Hey, man, but now after, the shit last week with Charlie Kirk, these stupid motherfuckers are going to step it up, especially when you've got news organizations like fucking Jezebel, 2 days before the shit went down going, yeah, we paid some Etsy witches to hex the motherfucker. Right. And then some shit happens. Right. Like, it's kind of, well, that's kind of inconvenient. Right. Because now it's kind of like, oh, shit, did that actually work? And then, the right wing Christian nationalists, these evangelical backwater fucks, right, that, have already been harassing, witch meets and fucking, universal church meets and stuff like that. They see this shit, they catch wind of it, and you guys should have seen some of the comments that were on there. Right now, of course, Jezebel's taking zero responsibility for like the comments and the threats being made towards witches, right? Because they are a, pagan publication. But the level of stupid irresponsibility from that publication is awe-inspiring, is absolutely fucking awe-inspiring. Okay, because here's the thing, and I'm going to be completely honest with everybody. And if people disagree with me, then people disagree with me. But here's the thing: you need to sit when you say, if you're talking about like hexing somebody, like a life curse, like a death curse, like you want to kill a motherfucker, right? In magic, I want you to sit there and I want you to ask yourself a question. I really need you guys, like when you go into this, like when you sit down and you say, you know what, I want this motherfucker to pay with their life. Okay. So I want you to sit there and I want you to look in the mirror and I want you to look yourself dead in your eyes. And I want you to say, if you had the opportunity to do X, Y, Z without getting in any trouble, would you do it? And if the answer is no, then don't go forward with a hex. Don't go forward with the curse. Because the problem here is that people are sitting here throwing around curses, throwing around hexes like it's a good old time, which makes me question whether or not people actually believe in this shit. It truly does make me question whether or not people actually believe in the power of magic and our ability to make things happen. Because when you have a publication like Jezebel that says, yeah, we hired some Etsy witches to do this, like it's going to be a fun article. It's like you essentially are saying, in a magical sense, that we hired spiritual assassins to take this person out. That's just rewording it. And that's just the honest truth. That's what it is. So, like, I do think that stuff like that really, like, the perspective on this shit really needs to change, because here's the thing. We're not the only ones that believe in this shit, because if you look at the comments, you know, if you look at the comments that were left by the Christian nationalists and these evangelical fucks on the Jezebel article, they believe it too. It's not just a difference of opinion as far as what we believe in, as far as an invisible man in the fucking sky. It's the fact that these people do legitimately believe that we are capable of doing things. But the way that we behave with this shit is we don't behave in a way that reflects to say, yeah, we believe that we have the power to do this stuff. Because we treat it like a fucking game, and it's not. It's not. And we need to stop playing with it like it's a game, because it's not. It's all fun and games until somebody loses a fucking eye. And I really wish people would take me more seriously and listen to this shit. Like, I really do. I really do. Because I understand, like, metaphysics isn't like, you know, like magic isn't like a thing that's like tangibly in front of your face like 100% of the time. But the fact of the matter is, the reason why we are occultists is because we get results. It's because the shit works. So we know the shit is real. We know what we're doing has results, and it affects, you know, the direction that we ask it to affect in. So I really think, like, we need to kind of, like, buckle down a little bit and kind of be like, all right, maybe we need some rules around this shit. Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess that is why I have no clue what is going on. Fair enough. Fair enough. Living, doing these rites, I've sown results and can see the wannabe. It's disgusting. The clout people want to have saying they do these rites. Exactly. Exactly. And the thing is like, we need to understand, we need to have a general consensus here that we do have power, we do have ability, and we can affect things around us. We have seen the results. We get the results, consistent results. So again, I will reiterate my point. When it comes to a curse, right? When it comes to a curse, when it comes to the power that we put out, you need to ask yourself that question, right? If I'm not willing to do this action, even if I could get away with it, if I'm not willing to do this, then you should not be willing to do this. That's the question you need to ask yourself. So, Curtis, when are you coming on? Because we can continue this conversation like next week, and I would love to get your perspective on it. We're no Nancy Downs. So that's just my thing. And here's the thing. Like, I'm not sitting here saying that, you know, these Etsy witches actually had anything to do with what happened. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they're responsible for it. But the fact of the matter stands that we are capable of doing things. We are capable of manipulating the energies around us. Alchemy is a thing, right? You know, the alchemy is happening all the time. And we need to be more responsible with the stuff that we're doing. And it's kind of irritating. It's you know, All good, Curtis. All good. Um, you know, it is important that we take ourselves seriously and we have rules of engagement when it comes to the stuff that we do, magically. Because if we just keep popping off the way that we're popping off, like it doesn't mean anything, like it's fucking Harry Potter or something, there are people that don't understand how the craft works. And we are going to be the architects of our own demise if we don't buckle up. Right? Honestly, I know it's not something that people want to hear. I honestly, I know this. I know it's not something people want to hear because it sounds oppressive, but it's just being responsible. God, I'm gonna sound like it sounds so fucking cliche, but I'm gonna quote fucking Spider-Man. Like, with great power comes great responsibility. We need to be responsible with the power that we have, like what we're able to unlock, what we're able to do. Because it's not a game, and we're not the only ones that believe it. The very people that want to destroy us believe this shit too. They're not saying it's not real. They're saying we need to pay for it. So, do with that what you will, right? Take it in, assimilate it, integrate it. But I think as we teach people, the next generation of occultists and witches, as we grow, our lodges, our charters, our apprentices, our students, as we build the future, rules are wise. Yes. Maybe there should be rules. Yes, I think there should be. And I think as we come in and as we begin to, teach the new generation of occultists in of our future, because that's what we're doing, maybe we should be instilling in them something a little bit more responsible than what we had. Because a lot of us started to build this without a full understanding of what it is that we can affect. And then as time goes on and results are consistent, we begin to believe more in ourselves and in the path that we have chosen. And I just think maybe it's important to kind of instill these values, these principles into the next generation, from the things that we have learned, not just how to perform magic or how to practice magic or, what gods to call upon or what gnosis to gather, or what herbs to use, but also, the lines, the limitations, and maybe some curses and some hexes should be under lock and key. Like, next week for sure. Awesome, man. Looking forward to that. We can do Saturday evening or Sunday morning. Your pick. And so I think it's important that we begin to integrate that aspect of it into the occult, into what we're teaching people, into what we're talking about. Because I'm going to reiterate the point, we're not the only ones that believe that we can make things happen. The very people that want to see us destroyed believe that we are able to make things happen. And if we continue to use our abilities irresponsibly without precaution, we will inevitably be the architects of our own demise. So, again, do with that with what you will. I do hope that this episode has been enlightening for all of you. I do think community is extremely important in this path. I think protecting one another and holding each other accountable is extremely important, not just ourselves. You are the first that needs to be held accountable. You need to hold yourself accountable. I need to hold myself accountable. We all need to be responsible with the power that we understand that we have and that we can wield. And from that, we need to begin to spread that responsibility and that accountability to the rest of the community. Love you guys. You guys are fucking amazing. Like, fuck, I'll wear a seatbelt. And as always, hail thy fucking self. I'll see you in the next one. Peace the fuck out, everybody.